channel is not intended to diagnose or replace the advice of a doctor. The content here is educational and entertaining. Hello everyone and welcome to the channel Malady. Today we are going to talk about an extremely frightening disease, the Ebola virus. We will explore its history and main symptoms. Stay with us to learn more about this formidable disease that has captured the imagination. The Ebola virus is responsible for high fevers and hemorrhages that are often fatal to humans. Discovered in 1976, it was identified during two simultaneous outbreaks in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The virus is named after the Ebola River near one of the initial outbreak sites. Since its discovery, the Ebola virus has caused around 20 epidemic outbreaks in Central Africa. In 2014, it caused the largest known epidemic to date, primarily affecting West Africa. This epidemic resulted in over 11,000 official deaths according to the World Health Organization, which is 25 times more victims than previous episodes observed over the past 40 years. Since its discovery, the Ebola virus has had 5 epidemics. The first, in 1976, was identified for the first time during two simultaneous outbreaks in Sudan in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, then called Zaire. The disease takes its name from the Ebola River, located near the village of Yambuku in the DRC, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where one of the first outbreaks was reported. The second series of epidemics occurs in the 1990s. In 1994, an epidemic occurs in Gabon, causing 31 deaths. In 1995, another major epidemic occurs in Kikwit in the Democratic Republic of the Congo with 254 deaths. And in 1996, two successive epidemics in Gabon caused 21 and 45 deaths respectively. The epidemic at the beginning of the 2000s, so between 2000 and 2001, there is an epidemic in Uganda that caused 224 deaths. From 2001 to 2002, there is an epidemic at the border between Gabon and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, causing 53 deaths in Gabon and 43 in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And in 2003, an epidemic in the Democratic Republic of the Congo causes 128 deaths. The largest epidemic, which takes place in 2013-2016, starts in Guinea and spreads to Liberia and Sierra Leone. This epidemic causes more than 11,000 deaths out of 28,646 documented cases. It marks the first time that the Ebola virus causes contamination outside of Central Africa. The latest epidemics, the one from 2018 to 2020, which occurred in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, caused more than 2,000 deaths. This epidemic was declared a global health emergency by the World Health Organization in 2019, and in 2021 a new epidemic was reported in Guinea, causing several deaths. The strain sequencing reveals a human origin epidemic resurgence by a recovered person. There have been 5 epidemic strains of Ebola, and the Ebola virus has had between 25 to 90% mortality rate depending on the strain and also on the treatment considered at that time. Fun fact: Ebola, which is considered an extremely dangerous disease, and it certainly is, still has a mortality rate of about 50%. But rabies, if left untreated, has a mortality rate of 98%. The Ebola virus is transmitted through direct contact with the bodily fluids of an infected person or a carrier animal. Here's how contagion occurs. The initial transmission, the animal reservoir. The virus is zoonotic, often transmitted to humans through contact with infected animals like fruit bats, which are the natural reservoir of Ebola, or contaminated primates. The mode of contact is usually through handling bushmeat, bites, or contact with bodily fluids such as blood, saliva, urine from infected animals. Human-to-human transmission is the second type of contagion. Direct contact with bodily fluids, blood, saliva, sweat, vomit, urine, feces, breast milk and semen. Exposure of mucous membranes like the eyes, nose and mouth, or broken skin to bodily fluids. Contaminated surfaces with secretions that are touched by needles, medical equipment, clothing, and post-mortem transmission like handling the bodies of the deceased, often during funeral rites. The virus does not spread through air, water, or food unless there is food contamination by infected fluid. The symptoms develop after an incubation period of 2 to 21 days, usually in 8 to 10 days. They progress in several phases. The first phase, the early phase of 1 to 5 days, includes sudden fever. We're talking about 38 degrees Celsius and above, intense fatigue, muscle pain, severe headaches, abdominal pain, and chills. Next, the intermediate phase of 5 to 10 days. We are talking about gastrointestinal symptoms, nausea and vomiting, severe watery diarrhea, rapid dehydration, increasing abdominal pain, loss of appetite, and skin rashes that sometimes generally occur around the trunk. The advanced phase that occurs after 7 days. Hemorrhagic fever, internal and external bleeding, bleeding from the gums and nose, hemorrhages in stools, urine or vomit, bruises on the skin, multi-organ failure of the liver, kidneys, cardiovascular system, and neurological dysfunctions such as confusion, convulsions, and coma. When we talk about hemorrhagic fever, we mean that coagulation no longer occurs properly to stop the bleeding. And obviously, the severe complications. We talk about hypovolemic shock, meaning a massive fluid loss, disseminated intravascular coagulation. We talk about the formation of abnormal clots and deaths, so a mortality rate that can reach from 50 to 90% depending on the epidemics and the management. After recovery, some patients may experience persistent symptoms for weeks or months, such as muscle or joint pain, headaches, vision problems, and general fatigue. People who recover from Ebola can develop immunity that lasts several years. Fun fact: Ebola, unlike several diseases, remains transmissible on a deceased human, while other diseases die with their host. Recent developments. In 2015, an experimental vaccine, RVSV-Zebov, shows promising results and is used during vaccination campaigns in West Africa and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The risk. In 2019, this vaccine is used to contain an outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Symptoms. There are also treatments based on monoclonal antibodies like MAB-114 and Regen EV30, which are recommended by the World Health Organization to improve patients' chances of survival. But unfortunately, the best way to avoid the modes of transmission. Obviously, it is to wash hands, avoid direct contact with body fluids, and wear suits whether to care for the sick or to handle deaths. Many people are asking, why has Ebola never become a large-scale pandemic disease? Here is a brief explanation. At the level of transmission mode, the contact is direct only, so you need to be in direct contact with infected bodily fluids. Infectivity is limited in the environment. The virus does not survive well outside the human body, which limits its spread. There is also the geographic and zoonotic reservoir. The origin of Ebola is very limited. It is mainly located in Central and West Africa, where there are certain species of fruit bats. So, the epidemic tends to start in isolated rural areas, which limits their spread. Then, the specific zoonotic transmission, meaning that Ebola outbreaks often start with contact with infected animals, limiting the initial human cases to restricted areas. There are also clinical characteristics, such as its high fatality rate, which can reach up to 90% depending on the strains, so patients die quickly. It's very difficult for the virus to infect other people. The severe symptoms of Ebola quickly make patients unable to move, which reduces the likelihood of spreading over long distances. Obviously, when we see this disease at work, the intervention can be easily targeted. A quick response including quarantine, contact tracing, and isolation of patients is carried out quickly. And we have managed to develop vaccines and treatments that allow for a rapid response. The incubation period is short, ranging from 2 to 21 days, and symptoms usually appear quickly. There is no contagion before symptoms. The disease is concentrated in rural areas, so it's easier to limit and implement quarantines. One of the most important elements is that there have not been severe events like world wars or large periods of massive migration as with COVID-19. Since its discovery in 1976, the Ebola virus has caused several devastating outbreaks, mainly in Central and West Africa. Efforts in research and development of vaccines and treatments continue to progress, offering hope for better control and prevention of future outbreaks. Stay tuned for more fascinating stories about the diseases around us. See you soon. Come visit us and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for other shows and bonuses. The Disease Malady channel is a presentation by Lucidius Studio.